So Socratically, what I would ask you, like Harris, is it the team's obligation to make the deal make sense for the sponsor? Like, to provide value to the sponsor?
So I would,
of course it is, right? Like,
well,
so if
I would say
the money is arbitrary.
Well, I would say this: it's the sponsor's the sponsor's negotiating a deal. The sponsor is negotiating the deal with the team. The team's giving them whatever information that is accessible to them, or whatever information that. Listen, every single time we do a report or we do a sponsorship deal, there's always going to be a section that talks about reporting and what kind of information is going to be provided. The sponsor will know full well what they're getting into when they're getting into these deals because they're negotiating it with the team in advance and they're asking for that information as a disclosure. Or at the end of the contract, once it's already been done, they're receiving reporting that's being provided to them by Twitch. So it's not like
so if I sell you a rubber ducky, if I sell you a rubber ducky for $1 million and you buy it, was it ethical of me to do so? Just because you bought it? Because that's what you're telling me, right? Like, so if I decide my rubber ducky is worth $1 million and somebody will buy it for that, is it a good deal?
Right. Well, what I would tell you is that the person that, I mean, listen, there's all kinds of conversations about this with respect to courts looking at or trying to assess the value of the deal. And they try not to do that for what it's worth because oftentimes courts don't want to assess whether the person was receiving fair value in the deal. They tend to let those kinds of deals, they don't assess those deals. They say that the buyer beware, like you're getting what you're getting. It's not like the teams are lying to these guys. Like these teams are still providing the information they're getting. And ultimately, it's the sponsor's job. And by the way, the sponsors might move away from the space because they don't like what they're getting. But that's not the team's fault.
I think that that's actually where I'm ultimately going with this. Is I think that is what ends up happening and has happened multiple times with teams that have burnt out. And look, it is a very strong statement for me to say that a team is quote like lying to
I don't think that's
a sponsor.
Fair statement at all.
But when you say your combined, hey, you average headset company is going to get in front of million. I see all these decks. I know you do too, right? Like you're going to get in front of millions and millions of impressions because you're taking all the LCS numbers and all the total numbers of all the total tournaments of all the teams where you are exposed, and you're counting that as an impression, and then you're pricing on that model. That feels a little bit unethical to me.
Agreed.
Okay, and I know that's happening, and that is my whole point of this arbitrary pricing is that you invent a number based on that because you don't have good data otherwise, and you're relying on the ignorance of the sponsor to agree to it. And thus far they have until such a point where they wise up and they get the hell out of the space, which we've seen been happening with the endemics.
Yeah,